Alright guys, the next historical Total War game isn't just another release in the franchise. It's Creative Assembly's last meaningful opportunity to win back the faith of the core fan base that built this series. Everybody knows that over the years, historical Total War has been overshadowed by the immense success of the Warhammer trilogy. And while that side of the franchise has undoubtedly brought in new audiences and expanded Total War in positive ways, it's also fundamentally reshaped Total War's design philosophy, for better in some ways, but also arguably worse in others. If CA truly wants to revive historical strategy gaming and recapture what made this series legendary to begin with, then the next historical entry needs to be far more than just another reskin. It needs to be a rebirth. So let's start with the obvious, and I've been talking about this for the last couple videos as well, but the engine needs to change. We've been playing Total War on a variation of the same core engine since Empire launched in 2009. That is 16 years ago, people. Sure, it's been retooled and repatched, but it's a brittle and buggy foundation that continues to show its age from game to game. Siege pathfinding is often unreliable and at worst unbearable. Naval AI is barely functional. Multiplayer regularly crashes or desyncs, modding support is limited, and every game since Empire has been forced to wrestle with the same structural limitations. It's time for CA to build something new, right from the ground up. The next Total War needs a brand new engine purpose-built for modern machines, modern players, and modern expectations. If that means delaying a future release or narrowing the scope initially, so be it. A stable, scalable, and moddable engine is the single most important investment for the long-term survival of the series and success of the next historical game. Alongside a new engine, what logically needs to come next is a brand new approach to AI behavior. The two go hand in hand, as if the engine is quite limiting, the AI won't know how to truly engage with the mechanics and layers of systems. And there is really no excuse for poor AI behavior in a 2025 game, especially not in a franchise where strategic planning and tactical warfare are the core pillars of this series. On the campaign side of things, AI factions still operate on a cheating, essentially, model of engaging with the mechanics and one-upping the player whenever it can, which it usually can't. The AI still fails to manage their economies, ignore key terrain, refuse to negotiate logically, build actual buildings. On the battle side of things, flanking is inconsistent. Reinforcements often mill around doing nothing. Siege assaults remain a comical mess. In an era where machine learning is being used to develop adaptive AI in indie games, it's not unreasonable to expect Creative Assembly to do better in this department. Smarter AI doesn't need to cheat, it just needs to behave like it has a brain, like we are being challenged. A revamped AI system that adapts to different play styles, different player choices, exploits weak points, and offers a genuine tactical challenge would completely change how engaging Total War feels over time. This is something desperately needed in the next game especially. But let's be honest, Total War's problems go far deeper than just code and AI behavior. The design philosophy itself needs to change as well. Since Warhammer 1, CA has leaned hard into unique faction-specific mechanics. Each race gets its own economy type, its own victory conditions, its own rules. While that works in a fantasy setting where lore justifies extreme asymmetry, it doesn't translate well to grounded historical settings. In fact, it fragments the campaign experience. It creates artificial barriers between factions, which are, at the moment, faction leaders and not factions, and reduces the ability to balance gameplay across the board. The joy of historical Total War used to be that every faction operated under the same broad systems: diplomacy, trade, tech, religion, conquest, population, supply. You could compare strategies between factions and see how each responded to the same set of rules. That's been lost in favor of these gimmicky mechanics that isolate playstyles and feed directly into CA's DLC-driven economy. We need to go back to a campaign design that has everyone on a relatively even playing field, but where every playthrough is a little bit different because of the choices you've made and how the AI responds, rather than the faction you're playing. Which brings us to downloadable content. The next historical Total War cannot survive on the Warhammer era model of piecemeal, faction-focused DLCs. That model incentivizes holding back content to sell later. It's not just anti-consumer, it's corrosive to the game's identity and design. We need to return to the golden age of Total War DLC campaigns. Barbarian Invasion, Age of Charlemagne, Fall of the Samurai. These were full campaign expansions that introduced new scenarios, new timelines, and meaningful mechanical changes. They offered new ways to play the game as a whole, not just new toys for one specific faction. If Creative Assembly must monetize post-launch content, which of course they will, then campaign DLCs should be the standard. Give us an Iberian Peninsula campaign, a Hellenistic civil war, the Wars of the Diadochi, or a fractured post-Roman world. There is so much depth to mine from history, and players want to explore more of it. And then there's also multiplayer that needs a total overhaul, not just back-end stability, which it desperately needed, but actual design changes that prioritize the multiplayer experience. Why can't we have proper in-game chat lobbies and friend lists? Why can't we create persistent co-op campaigns with savable shared profiles and with more than 1 or 2 other people? Up to 8 people on Warhammer 3 is amazing. Why aren't we getting that with a new historical title? Pharaoh should have had that, and yet it didn't. Apart from the avatar system of multiplayer in Total War Shogun 2, it's always felt really like an afterthought, tacked on rather than fully integrated. It can and needs to become more of a pillar of the experience. There are entire communities dedicated to campaign duels, cooperative mega empires, and historical reenactments, but they're forced to work around the game, not within it. Multiplayer has been stripped back across all the historical titles, and that's neither player-friendly nor sustainable for long-term success. And then there's modding support, a cornerstone of Total War's legacy that has slowly been eroded over time. Rome Total War, Medieval 2, Napoleon, Shogun 2 gave modders really powerful tools. The result, decades of total conversions, balance overhauls, new life injected into these old titles. But more recent games have steadily limited what modders can do, locking away crucial systems behind inaccessible code or making the file structures so convoluted that only the most dedicated can break in. This trend needs to be reversed. The next historical Total War must ship with robust open modding tools that let modders create new campaign maps, new scripts, new UI systems, and the ability to really overhaul AI behavior. The longevity of the franchise relies on modders, and Creative Assembly knows this. Without them, many of these games would have died long ago. Giving creators official support, clear documentation, and maybe even integrated Steam Workshop collaboration tools is a necessity, not a luxury. Pharaoh and Dynasties showed that bringing back older features is something players are really looking for and that truly makes the games better. The next historical Total War must bring back systems and mechanics that have been stripped out over the years. Where is deep family tree management? Where are court politics and mechanics? Why has religion and public order been reduced to 1 or 2 surface level modifiers? Where are supply lines that genuinely matter? Where's the detailed diplomacy from Medieval 2 or Three Kingdoms, or the immersive province system from Rome 1? Why can't we customize generals with meaningful traits, retinues, and progression trees like we used to? These aren't nice to haves. They're what made Total War Total War. Over the years, Creative Assembly has simplified or abandoned many of the mechanics that added layers of strategic depth to the campaign. The next game must reintegrate them, not as flavor, but as core systems that tie into faction development, diplomacy, and warfare. Systems that make you feel truly like a faction leader. Another area I want to touch on is replayability, and this is where CA definitely needs to do better. A single long campaign is great, but a game's true strength is in how much variety it offers across dozens of playthroughs. That means more dynamic events, branching tech trees, emergent diplomatic conflicts, and AI that reacts differently each time. Let alliances fracture unpredictably. Let plagues, rebellions, and climate shifts shake up your empire. Total War thrives when it lets you write your own story, not when it hands you a scripted sequence. These kinds of dynamic systems are key to longevity. They make every campaign feel like a unique experience and not just a checklist of objectives and mechanics to tick off. Like I said, CA has mainly been selling replayability through its DLC policy, let's be real, but we really need to go back to campaigns that are holistically replayable by way of overall campaign design and mechanic philosophy. And then last couple points here, but there's also Creative Assembly's legacy at stake here. This studio built a reputation on trust, innovation, and respect for history long ago. And while that reputation has taken hits recently due to rushed releases, broken features, lack of transparency, it's not beyond repair. But CA must show that it's still capable of leading the genre it once defined. And that means not just making a good game, but making the right game, one that honors its legacy, listens to its community, and dares to evolve without abandoning what made it great in the first place. The next historical Total War can't be a reaction. It has to be a statement, a commitment to craft and to the fans who kept this series alive through thick and thin. What I'm saying here is CA really needs to rethink its relationship with the community. I think it's already doing that a little bit, but the historical Total War audience is smart, passionate, and deeply invested in historical authenticity and meaningful gameplay. These are players who care about real historical moments, proper unit formations, economic systems that reflect things like trade routes, interesting resources, and balanced, engaging difficulty. They don't want every battle to be a fireworks show. They want tension, grit, and the slow satisfaction of turning a struggling kingdom into a sprawling empire through smart decisions and hard-won victories. To serve that audience, Creative Assembly must involve them more directly through beta tests, public roadmaps, developer diaries, and honest conversations about design direction. Communication can't just be a PR smokescreen. It must be a dialogue. This is simply an area that CA has not done a very good job with in the past, and that needs to change. Involving your community as much as possible. I mean, look at Paradox. They involve their community a lot more than CA do, and that would go a long way to rebuilding trust. Overall, this is Creative Assembly's last real shot. Warhammer 3 will continue to grow and evolve, maybe in the future into a Warhammer 40k, but historical Total War is really at a crossroads now. It has the legacy, the audience, the raw potential to be revitalized, but it requires real change. A new engine, smarter AI, shared mechanics, campaign-driven DLC, overhauled multiplayer, powerful modding tools, and a renewed respect for what made the series great. If CA delivers that, then the next historical Total War could mark not just a return to form, but a whole new era. If not, and they screw up a lot of these areas, then for many long-time fans, it may well be the end of the road. I don't know if any of this will really happen, of course, but I do think it's important to make these points again and again and again. CA does listen to what we say, and the more we talk about this stuff, the more they may just act on what the historical player base really wants out of their future games. We have to keep fighting for what we want. Either way, I really hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative. You know, if you did, give it a like, drop any thoughts or questions in the comment section below. This is a great area of discussion, I think, within the community that we need to keep talking about, keep letting CA know what we think and feel, what we expect out of the next historical game. So I definitely invite you to drop all your thoughts and questions below. Subscribe to the channel for more videos just like this. And thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.